get millennials to embrace golf and club membership? That's the question. Our next speaker thinks the answer is yes. If golf reaches out to them through the right channels with a message delivered with purpose, authenticity, and simplicity. In his keynote address, Henry DeLozier will discuss the most effective marketing and communications practices to target this enigmatic demographic. Henry is someone who really needs no introduction in golf circles. Go to a conference, golf industry trade show, read most any of those state of the industry stories, and you'll find Henry sharing his experience and expertise, encouraging excellence. Since 2008, Henry has been a principal of Global Golf Advisors, an international consulting firm that focuses on private clubs and their successful operations. Henry joined Global Advisors after 9 years, as vice president of Holt Homes Golf Division. Under Henry's leadership, Holt grew to be the largest developer of golf course communities in the United States. Henry is the board chairman of Audubon International. Henry is recognized for his uncommon understanding of the business of golf. He's an astute observer of demographics and trends, an innovative marketer, and an advocate for exceptional customer service. A graduate of Oklahoma State University, where he was also an All-American golfer. Henry and his wife Susan have 2 children, both millennials, which, as you'll see, has been helpful in researching today's talk. Please, without further ado, welcome Henry DeLozier.
Wow, Bruno Mars. For those of you who don't know, he's a millennial also. And he wasn't one of the original Beatles. Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you today. A few years ago, Time magazine ran the cover that you see up here. The me generation. Millennials are lazy, entitled narcissists who still live with their parents. Will they save us all? Or why they will save us all? And to me, the question for today is, will they also save this game that we love so much? How many of you have millennials in your life right now? Children, grandchildren? Okay? Then you have a sense of the kind of people I'm talking about. Obviously, I would be extremely well qualified to talk about millennials. As we always do in golf conferences, we get some baby boomer to tell us all about millennials. So what I did in preparing for the fact that I was not born between 1980 and 2000, I had to face up to certain realities, and I hope that I caused today some of you to face up to some certain realities. You know, I'm not as tech savvy as a lot of the millennials are. There are even times when I can watch television and I don't have to text, play Xbox, or be on my laptop. Really quite a remarkably focused individual. But I do think I understand them pretty well. And as Kevin mentioned to you, my wife and I have 2 children, millennials, a daughter, coxswain of the women's varsity 8, tremendously accomplished and talented person. Her younger brother, long pole defender for his varsity lacrosse team out in California at Santa Clara University. Both excellent students, highly accomplished millennials. Couldn't be prouder of those 2 people. I hope that some days I'm worthy to be their dad. More importantly, Global Golf Advisors, our firm which has headquarters in Toronto with offices in Phoenix, Dublin, Ireland, and Sydney, Australia, employs many millennials. They are so smart, they are so capable, and they are so determined to do well. And I want to share with you some of the research that we have done. The reason that I thought this topic might interest you is that our discipline is to say, let's start with the assumption that we don't know anything, and let's find ways to collect valuable information. So what we did was then go to our millennials and conducted research that said, who are these people? We engaged the millennials in our firm to do that work. And what we know about millennials is that they're beginning to settle down. They're starting to think about life differently than college. What we also found out is they have global spending power of $600 billion. So if they bug you, if you don't like it when they come in with their hats turned around backwards or their shirt tail out, understand that there are 80 million other people like them around the world. What it is clear to us is whether you call millennials Generation Y, Generation We, the boomerang generation, they will have a profound effect on our clubs and the game of golf. And the key for us is to find what those differences are and how we can better recruit them. So for me, and for I hope many of you in this room, I watched with great interest as Jeff was talking about such forward-looking technologies and new solutions that he finds. And I see some people in the room shaking their heads like, oh, brother, what in the world is happening to our game? What in the world is happening to all the things that we think are the most important thing? And I'll say to you that the key on millennials is being able to bring them forward. And I'll show you some of the slides that we think make sense to you. As you think about millennials, they're the first generation of tech natives. They're called lazy, they're called entitled, they're called self-absorbed. They're also called earnest, optimistic, and pragmatic. They have a frequent need for reinforcement. They expect to be told how they're performing. They want to know what others think of their performance. They even take photographs of themselves in the dressing room and send them to friends to say, how do you think this look? They have a massive fear of missing out. They have acronyms for everything, like FOMO, fear of missing out. Furthermore, they have a great penchant for making photographs of the food they eat, because there's nothing better than sending a photograph of what you're eating to your friends so you know that they know that they're missing out. They crave new experiences. And I think one of the things that you want to keep in mind about experiences is it's different for millennials than it was for we baby boomers. Their anticipation of what constitutes a meaningful experience is different. They're informed but not necessarily activists. They are pro-business and they're very pragmatic in their approach to financial responsibility. Despite mountains of student loans, they have less household credit card debt than any previous generation. They're the most contradictory of people. They're the most confusing of people, enigmatic in the least. Thank you very much. That's the part that has my name on it and says, don't say something stupid. Thank you for that. They are also, more than anything, peculiar in that they we gave them so many participation ribbons that they think they're supposed to get a pay raise every 2 years, regardless of their performance. They're different, and we've made them different. Another characteristic that I find interesting about millennials, they love their phones. They just hate talking on them. Have any of you experienced that you have to send a text to your millennials and ask them if it's okay for you to give them a call? That part I'm really serious about. They also are the most active on the internet of any people on the planet. If you look, more than a majority of them live between the ages of 18 and 29, live with their parents, more so than with a spouse. They're multitasking pros, which means they can juggle any variety of different tasks, which also means that they're easily distracted, and you have to keep your brand, your activity, your relevance in front of them. So if your club is not connecting to millennials, then you're not relevant. My young colleagues in Toronto have a joke, which is really not all that funny to most of us in this room, but the joke is, where is the best place to hide a dead body? Anyone? The second page of Google, because nobody ever looks there. And you know, if you think about it, if you're not on their first page, no one's going to look for you. So whether it's the Metropolitan Golf Association, whether it's your club, or any other business represented in this room, if you're not keeping yourself relevant to millennials, they will distract you. They're team-oriented. Gosh, I cannot tell you how amazed I am at the young people I work with in our firm. I sometimes send them responsive text messages at 2 o'clock in the morning saying, go to sleep. Because they knew that they had a deadline for 6 a.m. today, they went and did things with their friends and started working at midnight. Incredibly conscientious, highly productive. And as you think about that, what I observe with them is that they're determined to do their parts well. They aren't as willing as former generations, however, to sacrifice their own lives for work. So as a result, the evening with friends preceded the kickoff of finishing the project at midnight. And for all of us who say, no, that's all backwards, it is not backwards to them. What they will say back to you is, you said you wanted it in your inbox by 6 a.m., and I delivered that. And you know what? They're right. They want a more flexible work environment than previous generations. They want to work for a company that supports something that they believe in. I'll tell you that a mention was made of my service to Audubon International. One of the most effective programs that Audubon has introduced is a program to help restore the monarch butterfly called Butterflies in the Rough. And the program is meant entirely around, if you have extra land on your golf course and you can plant milkweed in it, which is a prime foodstuff for butterflies, then that's a good thing to do. That's incredibly relevant with our millennial audience. Why is that? Because the golf course is doing something important. It's restoring nature. For the rest of us who think at 1 o'clock we're going to be out there proving our manhood and getting ready to play in the US Open, they think this is a golf course that could do more. They think this is a way that their life can mean more. They're willing to try new things and new technologies. They're personally driving a new sharing economy with such things as Airbnb, Uber, TaskRabbit. They're heavily influenced by product reviews, Q&As, photos that show them what to expect. So for those of you who are not engaged in demonstrating your club's lifestyle to people who want to be influenced, then you're missing an opportunity. So, as you hear all that, what should be your takeaway? What is it that you think you should know from Henry's talk? And the answer is, they're complicated. I used the word earlier, enigmatic, because they confuse us. But whether you think millennials are the human crime wave that we're all going to have to endure, or whether you think they're the new greatest generation of 80 million selfie-snapping, Instagramming, Twittering ne'er-do-wells, it's important for everyone to understand that they also represent tremendous opportunity for golf. And how do we know that? We went and did some homework on that, and I'll share with you some of that data. When we went and talked to millennials, we started collecting information working with a group called Next Gen Golf. Anyone know about Next Gen? Several thousand young golfers who have a demographic profile that looks a lot like what you see on the screen. It was a group founded by another millennial by the name of Chris Hart up in Boston. For those of you who have not tapped in to Next Gen, you should. And some of this data will reinforce with you why that's so important. I mentioned to you the numbers that they have that are so remarkable, and I'll share with you several of them. United States National Golf Foundation identifies 6.4 million millennials in America. That's more than any other cohort other than the 6.8 million Gen Xers that preceded them by just a few years. And by a frame of reference for most of us who are baby boomers, there are more millennial golfers than there are the 5.4 million of us who are baby boomers. So when you go around and make the rounds, or you read in the business media, golf is dead, nobody wants to play golf anymore, my suggestion is those folks that are reporting that story, which is the same story they've told for the last 10 years, need to go do their homework. They need to talk to some millennials. They need to talk to Chris Hart. So they represent a lot of upside. But what will it take to turn their potential into our reality? When we started to ask that question of the next gen team, here are a number of the bits of information that we learned along the way. Where do they play? Why do they play? They play golf. They play golf to hang out with their friends. Now keep in mind, back to that previous slide, these are good players. These are people who average less than a 10 handicap. These are not folks who fell off the pumpkin truck out in front of the club. And so what are they looking for? They're looking for friendship, camaraderie. They're looking for a chance to do something fun. And here's some of the stats that support that. We had 1,033 millennial golfers who completed our survey, what we found was that the average age was 24.3, as I told you. 57% were between the ages of 18 and 25. 35% between the ages of 26 and 35. I think I might have stated that incorrectly. The 57% between the ages of 18 and 25. And then an additional 35%. Now, for any of you who are quick with arithmetic, that's 92%. So I'm assuming the other 8% don't know when they were born. Or in fairness to them, they probably just didn't pay attention to the survey question. They've been playing an average of 11 years. And by the same token, there has been a large group of them, almost a quarter, that have come on board in the last 5 years. So golf is resonating with them. Don't walk away from these stories that we hear in the business media and conclude that millennials are not interested in golf, because that's not correct. The data that we're finding is different. Playing an average of 30.7 rounds of golf a year, which is consistent with the industry averages of 20.8 rounds per year for men and 34 rounds per year for avids. So again, cross-referencing data doesn't suggest to you that this is just a one-off type of study that did not tie to anything else that's floating around out there. The average rounds played dropped between the ages of 26 and 35. Why is that? Life gets in the way. Family formation begins in that time frame. And remember, in a private club, the club is most relevant to prospective members when they are in their age, when they are in the ages of their family and child-bearing years. Once they start to bear children, then they start thinking in terms of where will we take our child for swim lessons, for junior golf, for junior tennis, for a safe environment where they can recreate. So that becomes vitally important for you. More than 2/3 of them play on public golf courses, and most oftenly the remaining third split between public and private based upon opportunity. Where they play golf is where golf is relevant to them. I mentioned to you the average handicap of this group is 9.8, which I found attention-getting. So when they're playing with their friends, you've got to look and you ask yourself, what is it that they're looking to do? And in order, what they do is they rank, they want to hang out with their friends, number one. Number two, to get outdoors. And then the third factor on the survey was, I'm interested in athletic competition. The cost to play is also a major factor. Again, credit card debt, family formation, so they're paying attention to how much money they're spending for golf. And there's another factor that we all have to take into account, and that is golf is competing with other activities and interests in their lives. I love golf. I think it's really fun. I have less than a 10 handicap, but I also like having beers with my friends. I also like going bowling with them every once in a while. I also like taking a road trip with them. So golf has competition. And that means that we have to make the game more receptive and more interesting to them. 60% of the ones of the millennials who are playing golf in this survey on a public golf course indicate that they're paying somewhere between $25 and $50. They're paying attention to how they spend their money. They're asking themselves, where do I get my money's worth? 3/4 of the millennials in this survey will consider joining a club in the future. This is very important in my books. 12% are already a member of a private club. Nearly half of the participating millennials plan on joining a private club within the next 3 to 10 years. That's a huge surge of new members into which you can tap. The key is learning how to speak their language. 55% between the ages of 18 and 25 said they'd consider joining a club within the next 3 to 10 years. Between the ages of 26 and 40, they would consider a club membership in the next 5 years. And just 47% said they would actually join. So pay attention. It has to be something that catches their attention. It has to be something that says, we're the club for you. Or to flip that around the other way, it cannot be a club that says, we're your grandfather's Oldsmobile. You're gonna love this car. Because they don't pay attention. One of the things that we learned is that the better the golfer, the more likely they are to join a private club. So these good players are the ones that you're going to tap into. By contrast, only 5% of the millennials with a handicap of 28 or more intend to join a club. So back to Jeff's example of we're paying attention to who spends money at the club. You need to pay attention to the people who are good players. Because the bad players don't see value in joining a club. They may play, they may participate in the company golf outing, they may play in the free golf event at the nice resort that their company is taking them to, but they don't define themselves as golfers. So that's an important thing for you to keep in mind. The takeaway for everyone is if I'm a bad player, there are just so many other things that are more important. If you look and you say, what is it causes them to want to join? It's engagement. It's a positive experience. It's something that says getting to be here at this golf course with my friends really meant something to me. If you look and you say, so what are some of the key stats that drive a lot of our findings? Note where fitness falls. You know, I think what it says to you is if you're not attuned to fitness, you're missing out. And you should have a fear of missing out. This is an economic engine for your club. They want access for the entire family. 65% of them are saying that. They are interested in a pool. 62% of them saying that. They want a platform for socialization. More than half of them are saying that. And so you see the rest of the slide. What I want you to take away is if you think about where millennials fall, what you understand is those are the factors that will attract them. Telling them about the tradition of the club, telling them about this is where George Washington played his first round of golf, telling them about we hosted the 1936 U.S. Amateur, does not capture their attention until the club has caused them to feel aligned with the club. Once they are aligned with the club, they're incredibly loyal. They are incredibly faithful once they see that their club fits them. It's not like it used to be where I want to try to fit into the club. These millennials are saying, I want a club that fits me. So let's get down to some brass tacks here. How much will they pay to be a member of your club? And you see some data points that you don't need me to read to you. But I'll tell you what we learned along the way in terms of the answer to what will they pay to join the club. They will pay any sum for an experience in a locale that makes them feel valued and relevant. Years ago, we worked on a project with the University of Wisconsin, and I had the occasion to be speaking with a person who runs the fundraising foundation for the university. And he was telling me that on graduation day, several thousand graduates received a gift card from the foundation, giving them 3 years of membership in the foundation. Come to all of the tailgate parties, participate in all the sporting events, meet our Rhodes Scholars, meet our Nobel laureates, be a part of the University of Wisconsin. And I said, oh, that's really interesting. So 3 years, what's the deal on that? And he said, we spend 4 years educating them. We need another 3 years to train them on how to be faithful alums. So fast forward a few years ago, when they were looking for the funds necessary to build a new sports complex to house hockey, which is a pretty big deal in Wisconsin, and basketball, they raised $25 million from one man, who, when asked what caused you to give $25 million to the university, and his response was, it's my alma mater, and they asked. So there's no substitute for the power of creating that emotional bond with these millennials and asking them to participate. A lot of millennials are just out of college. They're limited on funds. They're looking for a way to get into your club. You see the stats up here where you've got 41% who prefer to pay more annually than as a joining fee. Or in other words, for those of you whose clubs have an initiation fee of $25, $50, $100, $150,000, that's out of their reach. They haven't had time enough to amass that much money. But what they do need is a doorstep. They do need a way to get into the club, and you want to show them a path forward so that they can understand that their progression of contributions to the joining fee ultimately will get them to where you want your club to be in the way of an initiation fee. If you think about that, what they're looking for is a way to make the economics work. Since it's not their game, they're not in a position to dictate what is best for them. Since most of our private clubs want to maintain a certain aura and a status implied with we have a certain method of how we take on members, then all of us who are responsible at clubs need to dictate how are we going to take these youngsters on. Don't wait for them to show up with a check for $100,000 and say, I'm all set. Now, granted, there are some Wall Streeters that are making lots of money. There are some techies out in the Silicon Valley that are printing money. They're making so much of it. But the fact of the matter is, the rank and file of millennials are just getting started, just like all of us did. So they need a helping hand somewhere along the way. What keeps them away from the club? Cost, absolutely. Not knowing anyone at the club was one of the most profound findings that came out of our research. When I don't know anyone in the club, it's not relevant to me. I don't know if I like it or I don't like it. All I know is I don't know anything about it. So therefore, I'm not interested. We also found that they have never been invited. If your millennials don't feel that they're welcome enough to be invited, then you're not going to get them. So how do you get them? How do you reach them? Three keys: purpose, authenticity, and simplicity. Jeff used the term earlier about eliminating friction. That certainly comes into play as it relates to this factor. More than anything else, what you want to do is understand that when you're talking to them about the purpose of the club, that you're talking with them on issues that mean something to them. Make note of the fact that they support brands like Apple, Airbnb, Amazon, Fitbit, and Starbucks, which are all companies that say we represent more than simply a cup of coffee or an exercise device. We stand for something. They need to know what your club stands for. They need to know why your club is there. And furthermore, they like the idea that there's a lesson in this that applies to them from golf. They like the idea that they're going to have a role and a relationship where they're supposed to be of service to the club. again, back to Jeff's comments about no one can serve on a board or on a committee if they haven't recruited a member. I'm thinking of a nice lady that I met down in North Carolina in a focus group who was very grumpy, very, she just oozed hostility. I tried to get on a committee, I tried to be on the board, and they told me I couldn't be on the board unless I served on a committee. I talked to every single committee chair, and none of them would let me be on their committee. And of course, in that process, as I'm watching this nice lady, it occurred to me, I've only known you for 2 minutes and I wouldn't want you on my committee. To heck with all those other people. So the fact of the matter is that regardless of age, having people who bring a positive energy to the club matters. We talked earlier about authenticity, and I gave you the example of the Monarchs program with Audubon. They're busy. They don't have time to be distracted with things that are not important to them. They have plenty of time to be distracted by looking through the photo array of the party that all their friends attended. They have plenty of time to follow the sports scores that matter to them, but they don't have time to waste on things that are not relevant to them. Their favorite key on the keyboard is delete. So if you're not relevant, if you're not capturing their attention, they're not going to pay attention to you. When you're communicating with millennials, what we learned is that you should do a lot more showing and a lot less telling. You have to be sure that they can see that they fit in. And the power of that is images. They're a generation who have lived with devices in their hands that snap photographs. Show them the people with whom they will be interacting. Show them the events that you host. Show them that your club does not conform to that great Rodney Dangerfield line, remember, what is this, the dance of the living dead? They want to see that when they come to your club, that there are other people like them, that they're going to have some friends that they can interact with. If you think about where you're going to go with your millennials, what you want to do is be sure that you can show them simplicity. When you're thinking about recruiting millennials for membership, they're not interested in a transaction. They don't think that there's anything appealing around the notion of, well, we have a very high entry fee and we have a wait list, so, shoo away now, and we can't be bothered by you. Because their view of that is, hey, there are plenty of clubs. I read in the paper every day how clubs are in trouble. So if you're full and you don't need me, good for you, I'm happy, I'll just go to the next one. They're not interested in a transaction, they're interested in that authenticity that I mentioned to you earlier. So as you think about what is it you're going to do, if you're going to reach them, you're going to make it very easy for them to understand how they can become a member of your club. How they can put their foot on the doorstep and take one step after another. They also need to understand that while they're evaluating the club is evaluating them. Because remember what I said earlier, what we saw in the survey results is they're incredibly earnest. They want to demonstrate that they have earned their place at the club, that they have standing, and that they should be a part of the club. So you look and you say, so what is it that these millennials want? How do we go about reaching them? Putting aside all of the theories around their motivations and their behaviors, the key is, how do you reach them? And the fact of the matter is, you reach them with the tools that they use. If you look at this image on the screen, what you see is an image of people who are deeply engaged in handheld devices. The medium is the message. And it's a story that bears out 39% of millennials interact more with their phones than with humans. Let me say that again. 39% of them interact more with their phones than they do with a human. In other words, texting them is a way to get their attention. Calling them just sounds like another solicitation that they're phasing out of their phone. 29% of the American population is the bandwidth of the millennial generation, but they account for 41% of its smartphone use. This is an incredibly active capable, mobile, agile group. So you need to understand that. Texting them, using the SMS message platform is the way to get them. So again, to Jeff's point about mobile applications, critically important. The key for you is to be able to demonstrate how your club is relevant to them. Your points of emphasis are purpose, authenticity, and simplicity. But if you think a little bit differently, think about it this way. Because they're multitaskers, because they're easily distracted, you have to be sure that your tools are captive. If you show them a 1990s website, you lost them. If you get their attention with a text or some other communication, and they say, oh, this is interesting, I'll check out this club, and it looks like Bushwood, you're not going to get it. You've already lost them before you ever got to the point that you received a communication from them. Your website is your portal, and you need to understand that that's a critical factor. So as you look at that and you think about these millennials, I think it's important for all of us to understand how we communicate them becomes vitally important. I want to wrap up and tell you all how much I appreciate the chance to be here with you today. The question that I raised at the outset is, will millennials save us all? And I don't know about that, but the other question I raised is, will they save golf? And I suggest to you, that's a lot for us to hope for. And with good luck, maybe they will. If we give them the right set of opportunities, they probably will. So thank you very much for the opportunity to join us.